3. Hello again, I'm Casey Pierce of CosmicCasey.com. We are here with Mr. Jay Fosgate of Red 5 Comics. We are going to talk about your current baby, Bodhi Troll, and of course your webcomic, the continued webcomic, Dead Duck. And I believe that was 2008, 2009 that first came out. And that was a graphic novel.
Yeah, it was published through Ape Entertainment, and then I ran it as a webcomic after that and did only a couple new installments. I pretty much just reran all the old material.
Okay. Now, whose decision was it to make it a continued webcomic? Was that Ape Entertainment or was that you?
It was me. I actually took Dead Duck away from Ape Entertainment after the first couple of years. I just wasn't happy with the direction it was going there, and I felt I could reach a bigger audience doing it myself as a webcomic.
Gotcha, very cool. Okay, and if you don't mind me saying, when I first saw your artwork, it put me in mind of Animaniacs, and I'm like, why is it putting me in mind of Animaniacs? I'm like, oh, it's got a Warner Brothers-esque sort of appeal. You know what I'm saying? So my question is, what inspires you?
A lot of different artists, but as far as Warner Brothers goes, I'm a big fan of the Chuck Jones directed cartoons, and What's Opera Doc being, probably the one he's best known for, with Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd singing opera. But my cartooning style is very influenced by animators, and Chuck Jones is one of them. But I'm influenced by other creative types. Jim Henson, creator of the Muppets, is my biggest hero of all time. And I think that's sort of evident in my work too, because Fuzzy Little Monsters was sort of a very Muppet thing. So those are just a couple examples.
Gotcha. And Bodhi Troll currently is an all-ages comic.
Yeah.
Now, did you originally set out when you were first starting into comics, making comics targeted towards everybody, or primarily kids? Did you go with a target audience, or you just went with what you felt?
Well, when I started off in comics, I started with my graphic novel, Dead Duck, and that was for a much older audience. I was in college at the time, and I wanted to do humor that was sort of reflective of Mad Magazine or National Lampoon or something more college age and up. So there were a lot of sexual overtones, there was a lot of bawdy humor and things like that. So I was just doing things to entertain myself and my friends.
Right.
And in more recent years, when I decided to do Bodhi Troll, I said, I want to do something that reaches all audiences, because truthfully, that's where my humor and interests really lie, are the things that everyone can enjoy. A lot of the stuff that seems childish or whatever, I get the biggest kick out of.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what sort of infused Bodhi when I created it.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let's talk about Bodhi Troll. Who is Bodhi Troll? What is Bodhi Troll? I know he's adorable. I can't wait for the stuffed animal to come out.
It will be too, so.
I'm very excited.
Yeah. Bodhi Troll is a fairy tale troll that wants to be big and scary, but he's too cute and cuddly, so no one takes him seriously, which makes him this, grumpy little guy who goes through his day trying to prove how tough he is, and it never works out. Try as he might, he wants to be the villain of his own fairy tale, but he ends up being the hero despite his best efforts. He lives in the village of Hagedorn. He works for Ms. Bijou, who's a retired fairy godmother. She runs the Drunken Pumpkin Tavern, and so he does a lot of errands for her that he ends up screwing up, which creates these bigger adventures. His best friend is Charlie, who's a barmaid at the Drunken Pumpkin, who is a playwright and an actress on the side, and so she drags him into a lot of her creative endeavors, which he does it begrudgingly, but he'd rather spend his time trying to be scary and eating the roots. That's his favorite thing ever, is eating gross, disgusting roots. So that's Bodhi.
Gotcha. Now, figuratively, do you see yourself in Bodhi?
100%.
Gotcha. I kind of gathered that.
Yeah, I mean, my whole life, I've wanted to come across as this tough guy, because I never was. And I'm not saying I'm adorable like Bodhi, but I'm definitely not as tough as I would.
Oh, I disagree.
Well, thank you, Casey. So anyway, yeah, so Bodhi is semi-biographical. Charlie in particular, when I was a little boy, my grandfather nicknamed me Charlie, so that's where I got the name from. So there's a lot of connections to my family and friends and things like that. So yeah, it's semi-biographical.
Very cool, very cool. And now going back to what you said about Dead Duck with the college humor, you were going to Central at the time, I believe?
Yeah, I was going to Central Michigan.
You were going for art and theater. Now, did you...
Yeah.
Since you were doing Dead Duck at the time, you always knew you wanted to be a cartoonist.
Well, I knew since I was 5 years old I wanted to be a cartoonist. I've been drawing since I was 2. So, and around the time I was 4 or 5, I saw Charles Schulz drawing Peanuts on television in a special, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a cartoonist. So, there you have it. By the time I created Dead Duck, I was actually just out of college, just barely out of college, when I had the Dead Duck character, you know, in my sketchbooks and in different things since I was maybe 14 years old. So getting out of college, I said, I want to do something with this old character I have I'm not doing anything with. And so that's when I created the graphic novel and pitched it to Ape Entertainment, and that got my career started in comic books.
Nice. Now, that got your career started in comic books. Now, as a child, wanting to do cartooning, did you want to do comics? Were comics a part of your world as a kid?
Oh yeah, but specifically comic strips. When I was at my youngest, you know, besides Jim Henson, all my heroes were the comic strip artists. You know, Charles Schulz, who did Peanuts, Johnny Hart, who did BC, Bert Breathitt, who did Bloom County, and a ton of...
Schulz, you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
My whole kitchen is Schulz.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
So that I wanted to get into comic strips, and that was my goal for years. And it went back and forth a little bit when I was in high school. I briefly said, okay, I want to be in comic books now, because I saw guys like Sergio Aragonés doing Gru the Wanderer when I was, in elementary school. I said, okay, a cartoony guy can have a career in comic books. It doesn't have to be comic strips. But then at some point in college, that's when my interest shifted back to comic strips. And I went in that direction for the longest time, and then eventually it turned back to comic books again.
Okay, so you never really wavered from what you originally wanted to do.
No, I always wanted
No
to be a
time you're like, I
cartoonist.
want to be, a mechanic or anything else. You just always, okay.
I was no good at anything else anyway, so I figured go with what I love and what I'm good
You didn't
at.
play sports or anything?
No, I hate sports. Unfortunately, I'm not the typical manly man, so everything I did was,
You don't have to be manly to be in sports.
well, I just was, aside from shooting pool, if that's considered a sport, so I did that.
Yeah, okay. Consider yourself like a Paul Newman, you a hustler?
When I'm sober, yeah.
I'm not going to talk about that.
Probably shouldn't, no.
No. Okay, now you've had work published in DreamWorks magazine. Wow.
Yeah, that was sort of an offshoot of working for Ape Entertainment. After they picked up Dead Duck, they had me doing some other stuff for them, and they got the license to do comics with the DreamWorks animation films. So they were doing like a Shrek comic book, which I wrote a script for the Shrek comic book. Someone else had actually illustrated that. That was the only time I've ever done something like that. And then they produced what was called DreamWorks Animation Magazine. And they used my artwork in the capacity that Sergio Aragonés drew for Mad Magazine, where I would do these little tiny illustrations that went in the margins of the magazine. And it would just be goofy stuff with the different DreamWorks characters, Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, so on and so forth.
Wow.
So I did that for a couple different issues of it, and that was a fun experience.
I'll say that you were tickled about that DreamWorks.
It was great, particularly because I got to draw it in my own style. I didn't have to be totally on model. So,
Which is even better.
yeah, I prefer it that way because, sort of me putting my own stink on it, as they say. So.
Right. Gotcha. And now with Red 5 Comics, how did you hook up with them?
Well, after I took Dead Duck back from Ape Entertainment, I was looking at other publishers, and I contacted Red 5 because I liked some of the stuff they're producing. And as it turned out, they were almost ready to publish Dead Duck, and I said, well, did you actually really read it? Because I sent them the graphic novel, and they said, well, let's look at it again. And they're like, well, you're right, it's not quite PG-13 material, because that was sort of their ceiling. They're an all-ages publisher. So anything more adult than PG-13 they weren't going to publish. So I just wanted them to understand going in that Dead Duck wasn't a kid's book.
Right.
So, but they always had me in the back of their mind. They liked my work, and they said, well, come to us if you're ever all ages property. So when I came up with Bodhi, I did maybe 4 pages as a sample, and I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 2012, and I met with Paul Enns, the publisher, and Scott Chitwood, the other publisher, and showed them the samples, and they really liked it. And so within a month or so of meeting them in San Diego, we signed the deal. So.
Wow. That's very cool. Now, where do you go from Bodhi Troll? Like, do you have anything in the works right now, or anything that's too early to talk about?
Well, honestly, everything I'm doing right now is pretty much circulating around Bodhi, at least my main glut of work.
Because this is a big commercial success for you to date, correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
I would say so. It's making a lot of noise.
I mean, every issue of Bodhi is sold out completely, and they're not doing a second print run, so the issues are already going up in value. I'm finding I'm getting a fan base in different parts of the world that I wouldn't expect, you know. I've had people in Australia writing me saying, well, we found Bodhi here, we never heard of you before, now we love Bodhi, so this is what they know me for, which I love that. They don't know me for anything but Bodhi. Places in Asia have people have written me. Got a big fan base in Canada, particularly Toronto. So
and you're going to Toronto?
I'm going to Toronto, yeah. I always do conventions there when I can because the people there are such huge fans of cartoon artwork. Even if you're not a famous artist, if they like your stuff, they take to it. And so no one knew me last year when I went to Toronto Comic Con and Fan Expo. When they saw my work, they just took to it, and now I've got a fan base. So
that's wild. Now, upon you saying that, was there any point in your career recently that you just went, you stopped and you thought, wow, I'm doing it. I mean, I've made it.
You know, so long as I've been able to sustain myself just from doing cartooning, I've felt like that. You know, for years trying to become a cartoonist professionally, I had a day job for 13 years working in a parks department. And, you know, I never felt like a professional cartoonist then because that wasn't how I was paying my bills. But 6 years ago, I went full-time doing just comics and cartoon-related artwork. So that's when I started to say, okay, I'm really starting to make it. But you're right, when Bodhi came out, I'm getting more recognition than ever. I'm getting animators contacting me saying, we really like Bodhi, you know, can we commission you to do this or something, you know, and so business has been picking up, my name is starting to spread, so it's starting to hit me a little bit.
That's awesome. Now, back to what you said about the things that you get the kick out of the most are generally geared towards children, and you have animators from around the world who are mailing you and emailing you about Bodhi that are all different ages.
Yeah.
And it really resonates with them.
I guess so, you know. I mean, I think Bodhi kind of taps into a lot of things that all of us experience in our childhood. You can think of a cartoon you liked when you were a kid, and Bodhi might have some connections there, whether I intended it to or not. You're going to find something you connect with in Bodhi, I think. At least that's been my experience, you know. I mean, I look at Bodhi and I think about Where the Wild Things Are, because I love Maurice Sendak and all of his children's books. So, you know, these are things that I either connect to now just looking at Bodhi or things I actually intended to. But, you know, like any good fairy tale, there's a million different connections and influences you can see in there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Art like this puts people in mind of something as soon as they see it. You know, instantly something comes to their mind, whether it's Henson or like Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And even with the story, you know, like it's a complex character in an all ages comic.
Sure.
That everybody can identify with, and I think it's brilliant.
Thanks.
I really, really do.
You're kind. Thank you. You're sweet.
So, well, let's talk about something that happened fairly recently. You received a response in the mail that was a pretty big deal. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. One of my biggest heroes professionally is Eric Goldberg, who animated the genie in Aladdin. And I'm a member of the National Cartoonist Society, so all these different famous cartoonists from animation, comic books, comic strips are also members, but I haven't met the majority of them. But we have a booklet that has all of our contact information in there if we just want to reach out to them. So 3 years ago I wrote Eric to say, I'm a huge fan of your work and it's so influential, and I think I sent him a copy of Dead Duck. Bodhi hadn't even begun at that point. And just sent him a fan letter, you know, didn't know if I'd hear back from him or not. And then 3 years later, out of the blue, I wasn't even expecting it.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. He wrote me, and he's like, wow, I am so late. I'm so sorry. I should have gotten a hold of you so much earlier, but I love your artwork, and thank you for the letter. And just, you know, friendliest letter I've gotten. And he sent me some original artwork. He goes, well, I love the artwork you sent me, so here's artwork for you. And he drew me the genie. from Aladdin, and he drew me Bugs Bunny, who's one of his favorite characters. So, I mean, it was just one of the coolest things to ever happen to me. Having your heroes get back in touch with you, as you know, I've had a couple experiences like that in my lifetime, and this was a fantastic one. So.
That's so awesome. I remember when you posted that, how I made it for this.
Oh, yeah, like a
and I have a feeling that's going to happen a lot more.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. Thank you.
So, aside from the things that you're doing in the near future that are centered around Bodhi Troll, have you ever wanted to switch gears maybe and do something totally different? Have you ever had that in the back of your mind?
Yeah, quite a bit. More a couple of years ago than right now, because ever since Bodhi picked up, that's where my mind has been. But I was jumping around quite a bit creatively between Dead Duck and Bodhi. You know, I had some different comic book ideas that I wanted to pursue that are still in the back burner. Whenever I come up with any sort of idea for a character or a story, it goes into a sketchbook, and it might be a few years down the road, but it's going to get used in one way or another. So that will probably happen with a lot of these things that I'm developing. But I have my hands in other projects. For example, I'm a humongous fan of Popeye. And so I've drawn a lot of just Popeye pieces just for the fun of it, and I posted it on my DeviantArt page. And most recently, a printing company from, I believe, South Dakota got the license to do their own Popeye merchandise. They got it from King Features Syndicate, who owns Popeye. They saw my artwork online, they really liked my take on the characters, and so they hired me to draw a Wimpy t-shirt. And they liked it so much, the next thing's going to be a Popeye t-shirt, and hopefully we're going to keep that going. So it's been kind of a dream gig to work on these characters that I love so much. About a year or so ago, I got hired on to work on the Sesame Street comic book through Ape Entertainment, which was, you know, the same sort of situation because I'm the biggest Jim Henson fan in the world. So working on those characters was like finally getting to work for Jim. So that was a dream come true too. So. Thanks.
I mean, professionally and personally, I mean, you are just on fire right now. So that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Like your story, your stories and your personal story, I think resonates with a lot of people.
So.
And I think that's awesome. And I think you're an amazing person, Jay. So I often throw in a wild card question.
Okay.
As you may know, we recently started a vidcast called Dark One.
Mm-hmm.
And we do talk about paranormal, we talk about conspiracy theories, and darker topics that people don't want to venture out into. So I've already covered in other interviews conspiracy theories and ghosts and things like that. I want to talk to you. I know you're a sci-fi guy. Talk to you about man versus machine and what's going on currently with the production of drones. Are you familiar with this at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe not even that, but by the end of this year, as B movies have predicted, as
Skynet.
yes, novels, movies, you know, everything. By the end of this year, 70% of American jobs will be replaced by automation.
My job's already being replaced by automation.
Isn't that wild?
It's sickening to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I won't go so far as to say I'm anti-technology because I use technology, I use computers,
right.
but
Smartphones.
Until the end of my days, it's going to be pen to paper for me. So, you know, I've been raging against the machine my whole life. I didn't even get into computers until I absolutely had to in my last few years of college because I was forced into progress, basically.
Right. See, when I read, I use a notebook, pen and paper.
Yeah.
I post-it, scribbles, you know, I can't sit down and look at a blank cursor and just go.
Yeah, it's hard.
You know, it's too hard. It's the hand and mind kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but we're getting to a point where, especially like with drones and things, that their installed software has a robot think for itself.
Yeah.
And like in Pakistan, we've got drones. You know, there are armed that will fly around and they say, oh,
Yeah.
you know, they can target Al Qaeda terrorists and they know the difference.
Yeah, I bet they do.
Yeah, really, when they're terrorizing men, women, and children in these neighborhoods, you know, coming down, clipping them. There's casualties everywhere, and no one's reporting on it. Everybody's quiet about it.
Sure.
You know, and